Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. All right, today we are going to take a little look at Paperbag Dungeon, and that is from Dustin Porta. So this says it is a 2021 Solitaire Print and Play Contest winner for the Best New Artist, and says Paperbag Dungeon is a tableau building puzzle game with elements of tower defense and resource management, and I would say tile placement there. And this game is available from the Game Crafter. It was provided to me by Dustin to take a look at, so thank you, Dustin. And I think sometime in February, there's actually going to be a crowd sale on Game Crafter for this game. So if you like what you are seeing today and you want to get the game, you can get it during that sale. And the more people that participate, the price goes down. So it kind of offsets the cost of the print on demand costs that usually are associated with the Game Crafter. So this is a kind of a neat little game. It is a puzzle game. It is a tile laying game. It is a game of building dungeons and creating combos, a little bit of resource management. And one of the neatest things, and it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit, but one of the neatest things is that the art on the cards really does dictate the play. A lot of times in these kinds of games that we enjoy looking at on the Dungeon Dive, the art is just for decoration. It's just to set a mood. But in this game, there are game mechanisms and icons kind of hidden on the card as just art. And so the art serves two purposes. For instance, this card here, we have this skull. And this skull will tell you, the player, that this is actually a dead monster. And this card could be flipped over to be a live monster there. And there are certain times when you are playing that you're going to do that, flipping cards to have inactive monsters and active monsters. This little hatch here, if there are ever two hatches on the game table, on your table in your dungeon, then monsters can use those to bypass obstacles. However, when you flip that over here, you can see that there are two little goblins who are either trying to escape or patching up that hole. And the goblins themselves are also icons, because anytime you flip a card that has a goblin on it, any other card that also has a goblin on it gets flipped as well. You can also see in some of these cards these little gems here. Those gems are a resource that you can spend by flipping the card that they are on in order to flip any other card that is on the table. So that is the reason why I think that is maybe a little bit of a double-edged sword, is that sometimes there is an inconsistent look to the icons being used, or maybe they are hidden by some of the other art, making them hard to see or a little hard to decipher. And then it's just kind of the nature of the art in this game. But as you play the game and as you get used to the different cards, and as you experiment more with the different combinations and just pay more attention to the cards as you are playing, I think that that problem will kind of go away over some time. But I really do like just looking at the cards. It is kind of a Where's Waldo situation where I will look at certain cards and just notice some neat little details, like, oh, look at that Easter egg there. Are these guys tunneling through this wall here to reveal that hatch? And on the other side, there's a goblin there, and then there's a gem there with a hatch there. But once you spin that gem, if you flip that card, well, then you've unleashed a monster and some more goblins. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool little details to look at. And I really do enjoy just kind of like looking through these cards to seeing what Dustin has drawn. So let's take a look at the rules. So this is another little kind of a problem area that is often associated with these little single deck games that come in a single deck size box. And that is that the rules are usually on cards. And I don't think there is enough space on these, 5 cards here to really do the rules justice, especially when it comes to the examples of what you are trying to see on the cards are very, very small. So I would have liked to see maybe the rules like double, give me 20 cards of rules, make it a little bigger and have some better examples. One thing I did do is I did go to YouTube and I looked at Dustin's YouTube page for Paperbag Dungeon, and he has a nice video on there explaining the rules, and I found that very helpful. But this says, today's your lucky day. All those years shoveling the royal latrines have finally paid off. You've been promoted to head janitor of the palace dungeon. Now it's up to you to fix the mess left behind by the last custodian. Roll up your sleeves, rally the gnomes, and warn the goblins. You've got tunnels to dig and traps to set. But whatever you do, keep the gates shut. If a monster crashes the royal wedding, it's back to the night soil for you. So the game introduces you to its rules in a little step-by-step process. You start with chill mode, which is a really basic version of just learning how to lay out the cards in a dungeon. And it gives you the main win conditions are if you build a dungeon using all of the cards in the deck, that is one way to win. Or you build what's known as a perfect dungeon, and that is all the passages, all of the tunnels are sealed off with dead ends, making a closed system. So those are the 2 ways to win the game. The main way you lose the game in the main game is if your dungeon gate, which there are 2, there's another one in the deck, so you could have 2 entrances or exits, I should say, that the monsters are attacking. If they attack your gate, open it, and then escape through leaving the dungeon, that is another way that you can lose the game. So you have your chill mode, and that just tells you the rules about setting up cards. You are going to be connecting tunnels like so. Sometimes a card may not fit exactly, but you can always overlap cross-hatching. So in this instance here, we could play that. That was connecting, but we did need to overlap a little bit of that cross-hatching. So cross-hatching on cards can be overlapped. Once you get through the chill mode, then you're kind of getting into the real meat of the game, and that begins with janitor mode. So you add these rules to the chill mode. So you have a setup phase, a draw phase, the build phase is when you're going to be placing your cards. Then you might be drawing monsters. And as you're drawing monsters, you're going to be placing those out, and you're going to be trying to block their escape routes to your main dungeon gate. And then you also have traps, which can trigger. There are a number of different trap cards, and those will usually have these kind of like purple shaded pictures on there, details. So this is a trap that has already been sprung. And this is the trap that hasn't been sprung yet. And you can see the little trip wires that the monsters will run through. And they will trip those wires and they will trap them and they will get killed. And then you can flip them over to their inactive side. So there's a lot of cool little combinations in this game. Then it also tells you about gems. So gems is one of your main currencies. You may flip any card with a gem on it to spend the gem. For each gem, you may flip one other card. Cards may only be flipped once per turn, except monsters, which you may flip 3 times, and dungeon gates have no limit. Or you can also buy a flip with another resource. And one of the last things you do before setup, after you've set up your dungeon gate, after you've shuffled the cards and flipped some face up and face down, then you draw 2 cards, and those become your vault. And these are cards that you can swap out to build once you've drawn one. If you draw one and you don't like it, you can use one of these, or you can spend the cards in your vault to spend them as a gem. So right now in our vault, we actually have a really good card. We have this trap card here, and we have a monster card. So the janitor mode kind of introduces you to how you're going to spend some of your resources, how you're going to flip cards and what that means. And then we get into the actual like meat of the game, the actual real game, and that is the warden mode. So you begin with janitor mode and then you add these rules. And this says when you peeked up through the royal latrine to ask for a promotion, you never imagined minding the royal dungeons would be this complicated. What were you thinking? The monsters are digging, they're smashing down doors, even the goblins have turned against you. So this introduces the rest of the rules here. It introduces the rules about hatches. So hatches allow monsters to get around obstacles. Treat every hatch as if it were connected to every other hatch card. Open tunnels. If you ever have a situation where cards are like this, where they just haven't quite lined up, that is considered an open tunnel, and that is another way for monsters to get towards your gate there. Sleeping giants. Sleeping giants can't actually be flipped. They are, they're heavy. You can't flip a giant. But let's find a sleeping giant here. So there's a sleeping giant. He's asleep, and normally you can't flip that card. However, there are a few cards. I wonder if I can find one. There are a few cards where the monsters are making lots of noise by whistling or playing some music, and they will have musical notes on those cards. If you ever see a card with a musical note on it, then that note, there's one there. So these goblins here, they're playing the accordion and some panpipes. It looks like they're making a huge racket with those notes. Those notes will actually cause a sleeping giant to wake up, and then you can flip your sleeping giant card to see what is on the other side there. That also will activate inactive monsters. So goblins. Anytime you flip a card with a goblin on it, you must flip every other goblin in your dungeon. So you can spot the goblins. They're green, they have pointy ears, and they have pointy toes. You have these goblin guardians, and those are these purple guys here. So those are considered to be goblin guardians. And any goblin that is attached to a card that has a goblin guardian, they are immune to being flipped by other guardians. So those or by other goblins, I should say. So those goblins would be guarding these goblins, and they will not be flipped by the goblin triggers. We've already gone over the music symbols there. We also have great passing, door opening, digging, and stone digging. So this is another instance where the art really does show you the rule. So here we have a monster card. We know it's a monster card because of the monster's skull there. And we can also get a clue here what kind of monsters it's going to be. Those are like little egg sacs there. So if you flip that over, we see that it is a monster card because it's shown by this light burst, means monster. The monster is spiders. And as we can see from the art, they are moving through that grate. So that means that spiders have the ability to pass through grates. So grates will not stop spiders. Sometimes you will see other monsters that have been tunneling. So here we have this monster card here. We can tell it's a monster card because of the skulls. If that gets flipped over, then these are these kind of like dwarves, these mad dwarves. And we can see that they have gone through this stone wall. So that means that they have the ability to break through stone walls. Here we have some more goblins there. Goblin or guardians, I should say. So yeah, it's a pretty neat little game. So what you're going to do is you're going to shuffle up the rest of your cards here, and then you're going to just start by drawing one card. Now, in your first 9 turns, monsters can't be played. So as you draw a card, well, we know that this is actually this is actually a really interesting card at the very beginning. This is our second gate, and so normally this would be somewhere else in the dungeon, which would give us another exit to guard, but now we could play that. Now we have our 2 gates there back to back. So that would be 2 different places that the monsters could try to escape. I'm going to just bypass that for now. So we draw our card, we draw it, you play it the way it's the way you draw it. And so here we have some gnomes there, and there are really nothing here to worry about. On the other side, you would have a goblin and a gem. So you might want to remember this card as having a gem on one side. So this is just a normal tunnel. So we could play that connected to that dungeon there. the paths have to match up. Okay, so here we have a monster on its active side. But during your first 9 turns, you can't play a monster because you have to have a little bit of time to build up your dungeon. And so that gets placed to the bottom of the deck. Same as here, we have a mimic monster, so that gets placed to the bottom of the deck. And we draw this and we have just another tunnel here. So we can choose to play that. I'm going to play that here next to the entrance there. Our next card is another tunnel. Okay, so let's play this like that, building off our dungeon, make it kind of wide there. Next card here. Okay, so that is another dungeon, just a passageway. Let's go ahead and play that over here. And then here we have a skeleton. This is one of those, an example of the iconography being inconsistent. It's hard to tell that this is actually a skull, not a skeleton, because this is indeed a scorpion monster. Let's say this was my 9th turn, and I drew this up face with the skull side face up. If you take a look at the rules, it's going to tell you how you have to place monsters. Okay, so this says that if you draw a monster face up, you must attach it to your dungeon as far as possible from your dungeon gate. If you draw a monster face down, which is the skull side, you must build it as close to your dungeon gate as possible. So we drew it like this. There's our dungeon gate. The closest would be right here. And so we would have to build that right there. So now we have this kind of like open gap tunnel here. That's bad. This might be hard to seal off. And if that card flips over, that monster has a direct route to our gate. Our next card here is a nice little, looks like a little gnome hovel there. We do have some gems, so we can spin those to flip other cards. There is a hatch there as well. So yeah, just kind of looking at the card really will give you an idea of where you want to place it. And always remember to look at the art. Another thing is this is a sealed off area. So this would be one way where you could build that perfect dungeon, but I don't think I'm going to be able to now with the way that the cards have been laid out. I will not have an option to build a perfect dungeon, so that win condition will be completely out. So I think I'll just use that to go ahead and seal off that exit there. And here we have a trap. And this trap has already been sprung because we can see the purple part there. And so I'm going to place that there. Now, just for instance, let's say I wanted to arm that trap. I could spin this gem here by flipping this card over, spinning that gem. And then I could use that to flip this card over to arm that trap. So now if a monster was, let's say, this rat king here with a twisted tail, let's say they were there, they would try to get into my dungeon door, my gate there, but they would pass through this trap, which would trigger the trap, flipping it over, and then causing those monsters to go inactive like that. So that is another one of the combos that you could use in order to prevent the monsters from reaching your path there. But yeah, it's a neat little game. It's maybe more of an activity. It's a puzzle-like activity. It's pretty mellow. It does just kind of give you a pleasing feeling while you're playing it. And that is especially bolstered by just the art and looking at the cards, recognizing what's on the cards, finding the little hidden secrets on the cards, and kind of like you're searching for Waldo or whatever. But yeah, and just trying to build a dungeon. And after you've built your dungeon, you have this great big kind of sprawling dungeon out on your table. And it's nice to look at it and just kind of like imagine how it was built, the ecology of the dungeon, how the different monsters are interacting with each other and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a neat little game. It's very different than anything I have in my collection. And because of that, I kind of admire it. And it's not something that I would play all the time, but it is something to just kind kind of pull out when you're in the mood for something that is dungeon themed, but is not a typical dungeon crawl style game with lots of combat. If you want something that's a little more puzzly, some people really do like tile laying, and this would probably be a perfect game for you if you really like puzzle games or tile laying games, and you also like dungeon themed. So yeah, thanks for watching the video and taking a look at Paperbag Dungeon by Dustin Porta. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.